Here at Hamilton Native Outpost, we get a lot of people who call with technical questions. They know the land they have, they know the project they want to do, but they don't know the native plants that they need to get there. And so we have technical people on our staff who can help answer those questions. Today we also have with us Brian. Brian is our videographer for most of our videos. And so he has a property that he is actually thinking about planting to natives. Now he's got a little experience. He actually did work here for a period of time before he went into the video production business. But the time that he worked here, he really didn't work with the mixes. He worked in the field with the plants. And so he needs some help picking out some mixes for his property. And so that's what we're going to do today as a group.
So my first question would be on this property, what your goals are.
Right.
Do you have livestock?
Not right now.
No livestock?
So right now the property's all trees. Down the line, I'm hoping to get nothing larger than Dexter. Dexter cattle, for people who don't know. Maybe some alpacas, just because sheep are a little too fragile from what I've seen, sheep seem pretty fragile out here in the Ozarks. Maybe some chickens, maybe some ducks, and maybe if I can find a prairie chicken. I'd love to get a prairie chicken, but those seem hard to find. So light livestock, and then the rest more for attracting deer and other wildlife.
Okay, so you've got 13 acres that we're dealing with. What is the lay of the land like, and what soil types do you think you have out there?
Right. This top acre or so, acre and a half, is pretty much the flattest part of the property. Everything below that is slope. There's about a 3 to 5 foot cliff face going up and down this part here. And then everything to the south of that is a south facing slope with an elevation drop of about 80 foot from top to bottom. It's pretty clay and rock up in this area.
Okay.
Red clays as far as I can tell. And then a limestone shelf, which is that cliff face. And then the water right around here tends to seep out a little bit into a more wetland environment before bottoming out into a year-round spring-fed creek.
Okay. So do you have any glade area up below the cliff drop?
There is not really any glades up here. Okay. There's one specific glade over here, but that's one little bald spot. It's the only bald spot I've found on the whole property. It's maybe a 30-foot diameter circle, and everything beyond that is covered in either cedars or I want to say oaks, walnuts, and maybe some other native trees. I found one honey locust tree. But beyond that, it's wooded to a various thickness.
What percentage of coverage with trees do you have, do you think, overall?
Overall, I'd say it's probably 95, which is what, well, since I got it, I've been thinning it out.
So the first process is going to be to
thin all the trees, yeah.
You're going to thin them, or you're going to clear cut it?
Yeah.
Cut everything down?
Yeah.
Firewood, whatever?
Mm-hmm. I've been going for the Savannah Establishment Guide, so just selectively trimming out how many trees. At this point, I think I've cut out this entire area of cedars, just because the cedars are the easiest to, not the easiest to get rid of, but the most problematic that I've found. And so those have been pretty well clear cut by now. I have a little bit more to get rid of up here, and a little bit more to get rid of over here. And then I'll be selectively thinning after I burn the whole property, this area, considerably. So I'm trying to take out over half the trees, and just winter's a good time to do it since there aren't any ticks.
So as far as the timeline, you understand this is going to be a long-term endeavor. So
let's break this into different plantings, because to talk about the management and the mix that you may want to go to, there's different timelines, different management scenarios. So why don't you pick one, and let's talk about it first. Let's
start with this one, because this is the first area I cleared. It's the closest to the roadside. It's the easiest to access.
Okay. And if you called, are those buildings on it?
Yes. There's
Okay.
an RV right here and a shed right here.
Okay. So do you want to call this
Buildings.
the home site planting? Was that a good name for it?
It's certainly the landing pad. I don't think that'll be the home
Landing
site,
pad,
but yeah,
okay.
the landing pad's probably a good place for it.
Okay.
Good name.
So the landing pad, tell me about what is the vegetation there right now?
There is none.
Okay.
So that was previously all cedar.
Okay.
I have a picture of what the whole place looked like in the summer. So it was all covered.
Okay.
Since then, I have cleared out all of the cedar trees. I've thinned out the other trees that had been in the area, and at this point, it looks like this. This was taken at the start of winter or the end of fall.
The amount of shade will determine the plants that you want to put out there. If you end up with 30% shade, that's no big consequence. If you end up with 100% shade in a large area or in a given area, or even 90 or 80% shade, so meaning when you walk across that, you're in the shade 90 or 80 or 100% of the time, then that's so much shade that like the herbaceous plants, the wildflowers, the native grasses, they don't really grow under there. So we're just trying to make sure that you're not, setting yourself up for failure just because of what the tree canopy that you've already got there.
And the tree canopy can be removed. I'm not in love with any of the trees that are there right now.
Okay.
So.
And some trees are no problem. They're both a nice shade tree for you. If you ever put livestock on this part, they're a nice shade tree for the livestock.
Yeah.
And having more than one shade tree is nice because then the livestock aren't always under that one tree. They're spread out and their nutrients are spread out. So it's just a matter of like balancing, and there's no problem with having a shaded area and totally shaded in one spot, but don't bother to put seed there because you're just throwing seed away at some point, right? So first vegetation was all treed.
Yep.
You have thinned it.
Yep.
Is there any concern in your mind that you're going to end up with like fescue plants, like the fescue was under the trees because the trees weren't thick enough, and then you remove the trees and now that fescue is going to go gangbusters, or was it thick enough shade that you're really not going to end up with that problem?
I think it's thick enough shade. I'm not going to find that problem.
Okay.
From most of the patches of understory growth have happened along the roadside, just because that's where there's enough cut for sunlight to get down.
Okay.
There's not been any fescue. So my speculation is that way back when this was a cattle farm and it just never got seeded to fescue. That's my guess. I could be incorrect about that, but from all the stuff that I've found, it's been wood sedge, it's been purple top, it's been blue stem, broom sedge, but no fescue that I can find.
Well, that's a good thing in terms of
Establishment.
And you mentioned earlier that the soils on this are kind of a clay, so it sounds like a really dry, probably wet when it's wet, because there's not good infiltration of
Sticky
the water.
and wet, but yes.
But then it dries out during the summer.
Yeah.
Dry.
fairly dry site.
Yes, it's the top of a cliffside. So some of the digging that I've done has revealed to me that the depth of the soil is anywhere from 5 foot to 6 inches.
Okay.
And more often than 6 inches.
Back to your goals again on that site. Are you looking at aesthetics there, wildlife?
Yeah, I think that this
Not
would be...
necessarily forage production in that area.
I think so. Just because I'm not confident that there's enough ease because of the cliffside. There's not really a good way up and down that area. So that'd be something I'd probably fence off and either just keep for birds or other wildlife, but probably not any livestock there. And
is aesthetics a big concern? And by that I'm like, which beauty is in the eye of the beholder, they say. But do you mind plants that are as tall as the ceiling, 10, 12 feet tall? So in your mind, in this area, tall plants are not a concern.
Nope.
Wildlife with a few pretty flowers is how you would kind of describe it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Yeah. So a big goal of doing a planting is to get seed to soil contact. So you want your seed, when you scatter it, whether it's by hand or mechanically, you want it to land on bare soil. So not dead cedar needles, not dead oak leaves, but like actual bare soil. So do you feel like in this area, have you got enough disturbance from all your logging activities and whatever else you've done that you can get good seed to soil contact? Or do you feel like you need to do something, are there a lot of oak leaves, cedar leaves, that sort of thing out there? Does that make sense?
Yes. So in this area, I think there's been plenty of disturbance because I was over disturbing. There's probably too much bare soil, more than there really should be. I don't think the soil is very happy about that. But there's so little at this point because of all that disturbance that I don't think there'll be any issue seed to soil contact there. I'm also doing a burn on Friday of the whole property, and that will help to eliminate any leaflet or cedar needles that have survived up until this point on the rest of the property, but that spot as well. So I'm pretty confident that there should be plenty of available soil for the seeds to land on and infiltrate into.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what you want when you get out there and you're actually looking at it and after you do your burn, something that you're going to want to look for is like on any given square foot, you want to see at least 50% of the soil uncovered. So bare mineral soil. No leaves on top of it, no cedar leaves on top of it, so that you can get good seed to soil contact. So,
But you're planning on burning all of this area?
Yeah, I'm planning on burning the entire
You're going
ham
to try to burn the whole property this first go around?
on Friday. Oh yeah.
so I think if you go ahead and calculate the acreage that you have in this area that you want to plant, and then we can think about mixes that would be appropriate for you. And we can do anything custom you want to, but a lot of times the mixes are a great way when people, just know I want something for wildlife, but I really don't know a cup plant from a prairie dock, to get something that will work for your site and that sort of thing. So some mixes that really come to my mind, we have kind of a generalist wildlife mix called the wildlife chuck wagon mix, and that's a wildflower mix. I always like to mix it with some grasses. And I choose a lot of times, now if I'm in a grazing situation, but it doesn't sound like this is really a grazing focus area at all. I do different grass mix. But for a non-grazing area, I often choose the shorter, less aggressive grasses. And not to say the others are aggressive like spreading necessarily, but to say that they're bigger and they take more space and they compete more with the wildflowers. So they make a great choice for a grazing place. So if you have other areas where you want to graze, that's what we're going to be looking at. But in this wildlife area, focus area, more of the shorter, less aggressive grasses are a nice match with those wildflowers. So I always mix the two, and you can vary that ratio between the wildflowers and the grasses to whatever you want. And so there's a couple different factors that most people consider. One is, well, I want more wildflowers, or I want more grasses. What do you find beautiful? There's also, from the wildlife standpoint, like they really like some forbs, but they like a few grasses out there too. And so there's your goals of what is beauty and what is good wildlife habitat. There's what is wildlife really like, and then there's also the budget goals, because the grasses are the less expensive component of that mix. So does that sound like a good choice? Is that kind of matching your goals as far as wildlife and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
So a companion grass and forb. We have some pre-mixes, and we can add to or either one, depending on what you think you want.
I think if I were to just do a companion grass, I'd have to guess this would be a dry site with some wildlife mix. I think that'd be just fine.
Okay.
So here is, to give you an idea of what is in these mixes, here's a wildlife chuck wagon mix. And this is, again, the forb component, and forbs is just a fancy word for wildflowers. So here's the contents of it, and it'll have at least 20 different species. A lot of times it has just a few more in it. And so just a large diversity. And basically what that does is it's producing not only seeds for the wildlife that like to eat those seeds, it's producing green vegetation for the wildlife that likes to eat green vegetation. And then also you've got a lot of diversity, so that, like the insects, for instance, which is the foundation of all the wildlife food
Yeah.
chain for the most, not all of it. Deer don't need to eat insects, but a lot of birds do, right? So if we can get a variety of wildflowers out there, we can get a variety of insects, which supports our bird population, supports those
It's really
critters that
important for
depend on it.
quail.
Yeah.
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 I mean, that's what those baby chicks feed on initially.
Mhm.
If they don't have insects, their chances of survival are pretty low.
And if you can get your prairie chicken, that's
Oh.
what it's going to be.
Oh, exotic.
Same thing,
Good luck keeping it on your property.
right?
Well, there's only fescue around. No.
So then to mix it with a companion grass mix, probably for dry sites,
Yep.
sounds like a really dry site, would be a good option. There is another option that comes to my mind if you are like the wildlife chuck wagon. The wildlife chuck wagon mix will be a great mix to meet your goals of wildlife. The only thing that comes to my mind is that you've got a really dry site.
Yep.
And so there is a dry and rocky mix. It's designed more with landscaping, so like a wildflower meadow in mind, which just means we're choosing pretty flowers. We're
Yeah.
not choosing the less pretty ones. And we're also not going too tall. So we don't put sawtooth sunflower in there, for instance, that gets 12 feet tall. So, but it's super adapted to super dry sites. So if you feel like you're really, I'd say the wildlife chuck wagon is not too wet, not too dry. Just general mix. If you've got a really dry site, you might think about the dry and rocky mix, or you might mix the wildlife chuck wagon mix and the dry and rocky mix for your forb component,
Yeah.
and then do the companion grass mix. With any way you go, you'll want to do some companion grass mix
Right.
with it.
Right. I agree.
I think that's probably, when it comes to having the best of both worlds, I'm sure there are some things in dry and rocky that would absolutely love it, just like there'll be some things that wouldn't quite be dry enough. And the same thing for the chuck wagon. I think that's probably a good way to have the best of
blend
both
the two.
worlds. Yeah.
Okay.
Have the best of both worlds and also just get a few more species out there.
Okay.
Sounds good to me. Now, I would maybe say, as I'm thinking about it, with the trees I've since cut, which has been this area up until this old logging road, maybe I could extend this area to be about that big.
Okay.
Um,
And do you think same goals with it of
same,
wildlife?
yeah, it's the same type of soil, it's the same context. Maybe one day I'll put a pond up here, but that's way down the line. So.
Okay, so I guess if we just kind of think about dry and rocky wildlife chuck wagon mix and then the companion grass for dry sites, do you have thoughts about the ratio that you want to go? And keeping in mind that from the wildlife standpoint, more forbs is usually better.
Mhm.
I like to put in at least 25% grasses,
Right.
but it's also more expensive. And so I don't know, and beauty, alas, you have to consider that too, is in the eye of the beholder. Some
Right.
people are like, a wildflower field, there's nothing prettier, nothing better in my mind. Some people are like, I love a grass field with a few wildflowers dotted in. So you have to weigh that in there. So do you have thoughts like, are you 50-50 grass and wildflowers? Are you 75% wildflowers and 25% grasses, or 25%
If we-
wildflowers and 75%
If we did
grass?
75 or 25, 50% on grass and then
Okay.
25% of each fork mix.
Okay,
Does that sound about right?
that sounds like a nice mix. Yeah.
Mhm.
Works for me.
So 25%. And what we can do is get a quote for you,
Yeah.
so you can see this, and then you can go home, compare to your budget,
Yep.
think about it some more, and it's just a great place to start the conversation. If you're like, let's adjust that, or I got to thinking, I really want some, I love whatever
Mm-hmm.
cactuses, whatever it is that you really would like to see there. We can talk about, is it adapted? Should we put that there? Or maybe you should put that in another area and customize it. So we can go a lot of different directions from here.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there another area? We talked about the landing pad area. Is there another area you think you're going to be ready to plant here this winter?
Yes. So right along the bottom side, make this kind of blue.
So I guess at this point, Brian, we can get you a quote. I do need the acreages, so you can get that measured. And there's different ways you can do it. You're probably pretty tech savvy, so I'm going to guess you can measure it on your computer. But of course, you can go step it off. If you ever need help calculating any of it because you get it stepped off or something, let us know. We're happy to help. But Get us the acreage, and then we can get you a quote on the different mixes. You can look at it. We can adjust. You know, if you're like, hey, I really want some butterfly milkweed. I really love that. Which place should I put it? We can do that.
Right.
So it's a good place to start the conversation as far as those things. But then I guess when you get ready to do it, you know, we like to have a couple weeks notice. If we know that you're in a big hurry or something, we try to work with you. But that gives us, and I guess you might come pick it up, so maybe just a week notice. But we like to have a week to get around, get all the paperwork done on our end, get it bagged up, because it's not quite like Walmart. Not everything's on the shelf, you know, like it is at Walmart.
Right.
So we
And
have
if
to
it's a
custom
custom
bag it.
mix, it takes longer.
Right.
Yep.
So
And then a
Keep
week
that
for
in
UPS
mind.
to get it to you. So a week or two would be perfect if we can have that lead time. But we'll try to work with you on whatever you get.
Is it, and it just for everyone watching, is it better to call in or show up?
Yeah, so if we know that you're coming and you want something bagged up, we can try to do that. But it's not like Walmart where everything's on the shelf ready to go. And so everything is custom. Even like the mixes that we've talked about, we still have to go bag up your portion because you have a unique set of acreage as opposed to the next guy down the road, right? So everything takes a little time around here. And so usually if you get something set up and then come pick it up once it's already bagged, that's usually the best. But some people want to come and talk about it and get their seed all the same day. Well, maybe you can go eat lunch in town while we bag it up or something. So we try to work with
And we've
people
done
with
that
their
before.
goals. Yep.
And they should just call in advance if they want to
Call in
schedule a
advance,
time.
make sure one of our technical people can be available to meet with you and that sort of thing.
Awesome.
Yep.
So if someone wants to order seed, they should go to HamiltonNativeOutpost.com, and there they can find emails and phone numbers and everything.
Yeah, our website. And it has a lot of great information. You've already perused it, I can tell, because you can talk about the Savannah Establishment Guide. There's also a great guide that might be useful to you about 9 tips to establish a silvopasture or savanna. But there's a lot of really good information on there, so it is a good place for people to go to get information.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. It really helps if the landowner has prepped themselves a little bit with the website. You know, it's too much to absorb when you're discussing it on the phone.
Yeah.
So hopefully this has helped you to understand what the process is we go through when somebody calls in with some goals, wants to do native plants. We try to feel out the soils, feel out the sun, shade situation, feel out the goals, feel out what the current vegetation is, so you know, have a plan to get from where you are to where you want to go. And so this is kind of the process we go through. We've done it here with Brian today because this is a real planting he's going to do, but it was just a great chance to sit down and show what we do for one of these phone calls. So if you have questions, if you'd like to chat with our technical staff, give us a holler. Sometimes we have to set up an appointment because it's not just a 2-minute conversation. They don't all go as long as this one, but you know, a lot of times 30 minutes or something on the phone is to be expected. And if you want to send information ahead of time, maps, pictures of the site, something like that, email that in or some other way of getting it to us, can be a great tool for us to look at as we're starting in on the conversation to know more about your site. This has been Elizabeth and Larry with Hamilton Native Outpost, and it's been fun to have Brian on the other side of the camera with us today.